Bienvenido. If you are able, please share this show with a friend, leave us a nice review on the podcast player of your choice, or if you'd like to support us financially, sign up for the companion podcast, The St. Nicholas Project, on Gum Road. All these things really help us out. Namaste.
Hello, friend. The Mystical American Patriots Society is transmitting to you from beneath 4 million cubic feet of solid granite, in the burning heart of the Yellowstone caldera. This is a variety program for normal sandwich-eating Americans with some concerns about living in a deranged, post-Christian technocracy. So, keep your third eye on the sky and your ear to the ground, as Sumo and Smokestack connect your main brain vein to a higher plane. Are you ready? Stand by.
You can get more at the Poor People Store. The Poor People Store, where you can get it. You can get more at the Poor People Store. The Poor People Store, where you can get it. Some knockoff jeans with irregular seams, some chairs made of beans, and some beauty creams. Some Christina Aguilera black mascara, corn tortillas, and some brown aloe vera. You can get more at the Poor People Store. The Poor People Store, where you can get it. Ooby-dooby-dooby. You can get more at the Poor People Store. The Poor People Store, where you can get it. Some socks with flames, some pills for your pains, some razors infused with the essence of rain, a cigarette lighter that says I'm a quitter, a fish that sings, take me to the river. You can get more at the Poor People Store. The Poor People Store, where you can get it. Ooby-dooby-dooby. You can get more at the Poor People Store. The Poor People Store, where you can get it. Pantyhose, no dose. I suppose there's even some clothes you will wear that will make you smell the smell you smell when you get out of jail. You can get more at the Poor People Store. The Poor People Store, where you can get it. Ooby-dooby-dooby. You can get more at the Poor People Store. The Poor People Store, where you can get it. Hello, good morning. Let's talk about prison rape today. If that's okay with you.
I mean, I guess.
Yeah.
That was a really smooth transition.
I thought so.
You're growing as a broadcaster.
I'm growing as a podcast. See, the thing is, I wanted to play because we're going to discuss a book today.
Okay.
Called Who Built the Moon?
Yeah.
And there was a song by the same artist that the song I just played called Who Built the Moon, but I already played that.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
It
was this.
Yeah, I remember this tune.
Yeah. Once there was a pilgrim. He was lonely as a broom. But see, I couldn't do that twice.
No, you can't do that.
So I had to do a different song by the same guy, and that would sort of be like a reference. And then I thought, well, it's okay because also we have inflation going on and everyone feels a lot poorer. And so if they don't, maybe they can get more at the Poor People Store.
Yeah.
I saw a very fancy Dollar General the other day.
They've gone upscale. We've got a fancy one too.
Yeah, Walmart is too expensive now. So you have to go down to Dollar General.
Yeah.
And then after that, there's the Dollar Tree.
Yeah.
That still has everything is actually $1.
Yeah. No, it's great. That Dollar Tree is my daughter's favorite store, and she always wants me to take her there. I'm like, yes, babe, I will take you to Dollar Tree.
I'll take you to Dollar. My kids like this store called, it's like a I don't remember what it's called. Everything is $5 or less.
Okay.
I don't know if it's a global chain.
You've got some upscale kids, man. The $5 store.
The $5 store, that's right. Yeah, but kids are fine just spending $1, and it lets them whatever they have in their piggy bank, they feel like they're really high rolling.
Yeah. The Dollar Tree's great.
I'm covered in Parmesan cheese.
That's a good problem to
I
have.
don't know if you could tell. My singing was a bit labored because I took a nap earlier, and I woke up and I had this sore on my tongue. And the only thing I could think is that while I was napping, I bit my tongue.
Oh man.
So now it hurts, but it's okay. I'm not asking for sympathy.
We're gonna push through.
We're gonna push through.
I'm gonna drag you through this show.
Yeah, we must.
We must.
The show must go on, as they say.
Yeah.
In acting class and showbiz class. But yeah, we're gonna talk about prison rape because Brian Laundrie is alive.
Wait, what?
Maybe.
What does that have to do? Man.
I know it's. You gotta keep up.
Okay, I'm
Last
gonna
night,
try.
I saw the moon disappear for real. It was crazy.
What?
But anyway, I'll talk more about that in a minute.
Okay.
But it was Brian. But I was coming up the hill. We were camping. There was a moon.
Yeah.
As it happens in the sky sometimes, there's a moon.
Right. Sure.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was a waxing crescent. Pretty sure.
Okay.
You know, it's hard to tell the difference just eyeballing between waxing and waning crescent.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm pretty sure it's waxing. And I even commented on it. I was like, look at that moon. It's beautiful over the lake there. 5 minutes later, I turn around, moon's completely gone out of the sky.
What?
I know. I still don't know how to explain it. It was one of the weirder things that ever happened to me. But I took it as a sign that I was on the right track talking about the book, Who Built the Moon.
All right.
Because sometimes I think, yes, is that somewhat egotistical to think maybe the universe disappeared a planetary body for my podcast?
Nah, it's not.
But also,
sounds okay.
Is reasonable.
Yeah.
Right? But Brian Laundrie, here's the problem. Here's the problem with Brian Laundrie. Did you keep up with this case at all?
No, I think this is dumb.
It is, but I think it's dumb on purpose. Here's the thing. So he allegedly killed Gabby Petito. I don't know that that's been proven.
Okay.
You know, I don't know that that's been proven.
Well, if he's dead, it's never going to be proven. I mean,
exactly.
What are they going to do?
I don't know. She was allegedly found to have been killed by strangulation.
Okay.
But we don't know that he did that.
Sure.
Just because he was the last person with her and came back without her and didn't mention it.
Yeah. I mean,
yeah, that points fingers at him.
It's a little suspicious.
It's all circumstantial evidence, really.
Uh-huh.
But Brian then went off into he went back to his parents' house in Florida because he's a Florida man. And then he did disappear for a while. He went to the woods, and I think I have my story right here. He went into like the Everglades, basically, or some forest in Florida. Some like foresty Florida part.
Well, I mean, honestly, if everybody thought I murdered somebody, I would probably go to the forest too.
Right, exactly. Thank you. And the FBI looked for him for like 15 days.
Mm-hmm.
And then one day his parents come to show up to look for him too. At the same park.
Okay.
And within 30 minutes, like, oh, his remains are over here. Look.
What?
Oh, look. Have you guys looked over there? And the FBI goes over there and they look and they find some remains of human being.
Mm-hmm.
And they allegedly identified using his teeth as being Brian Laundrie. But there's problems with that when you think about it.
Okay.
One, the parents found his remains exceedingly quickly upon arrival.
Right.
Right. Two, it hasn't been that long. He shouldn't have been decayed to the bones, to the skeleton.
Well, what if Gator got him?
Well, that's the thing. People say a gator got him, but a gator doesn't strip the skin off your bones. It like eats a chunk of you.
I mean, is it reported that the remains were skeletal?
It's reported that what was needed was a dental record to identify.
Well, you know, the Florida swamp is a hot place. Think the decomposition could happen a little faster than normal there. Hot and wet. A lot of bugs.
Maybe, but I still think, if you... Because I have a lot of experience with you dying, as you're, like, what, the 97th clone?
Yeah, I am.
And you as they get better, they decompose. I don't even think my first clone decomposed that quickly.
Okay.
And that one died a horrible death.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was like Dolly the Lamb, the first version.
Yeah, cloning is ugly business.
Bad.
I try not to think about it.
Yeah, so so there's that. But then also, the parents were very suspicious during the whole thing. Like, his mother, like, while her son is like on the run.
Yeah.
She's like outside gardening because people would fly drones over their house and take pictures of them.
Uh-huh.
And she's gardening with a backhoe.
Yeah, that's a little weird.
Like not a giant one, but one of those little ones.
Yeah, like a little bobcat.
Little bobcat. She's gardening with that in like a backyard suburbia. Gotta do gardening. And there's one video where and they took this one. I think I had trouble finding it again, which makes me suspect it was taken down because it was revealing.
Mm-hmm.
But you can find it where they're like hovering over there and the parents are milling around, and then it looks like from above that like a hand comes out of the bushes and grabs something. As though Brian Laundrie is hiding in his parents' bushes.
The last place the FBI would check.
Exactly. The last place they would check is the hedgerow. Right? And I wouldn't put it past the FBI to overlook, like, looking in the crawl space. Like, I don't know. We looked the whole national... Did you check the crawl space of his parents' house? No. Okay. So I wouldn't, put it past them.
Sure.
But there's a couple of options. Now, my wife's friends and her are of the opinion that his parents killed him.
Whoa.
This is apparently a common opinion.
Okay.
Among moms of a certain age group.
This affair is getting sorted.
Right. And my wife was so certain when she said it, it sort of scared me a bit because I realized, she'd kill one of us too, if it came to it.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, okay, just mental note.
Right.
He's not above murder.
Okay.
Because she was like, he messed up.
Yeah.
I said, do you think they would kill their own son? She looked at me. She looked at me while she was chopping onions and pointed the knife at me and said, he messed up. I said, oh.
You better straighten up and fly right, boy.
He said, he messed up. Boy, he said, he strangled that girl and he messed up.
He done goofed. You can't bring the whole family down.
Right. And she actually said he brought dishonor on his family.
Based.
So, in her mind,
yeah,
they then killed him.
Yeah.
And then...
I like the way your wife thinks. Always have.
Yeah, and then took teeth, I guess, out of... Not only killed him, but then ripped teeth out of their son's dead mouth.
Yeah.
And took it to the forest and planted it there for the FBI to find. But here's the problem with that. To my knowledge... Because that's an easy way to fake someone's death is to just pull out teeth and be like, we found their teeth.
Yep.
To count as evidence that a person is dead in a homicide case, it has to be attached to the jawbone.
Right. They can't just be a pile of teeth.
Right. You can't just have a pile of teeth. Like the Gatorade, everything but the teeth. Case closed. Right? That wouldn't work. So, that means if my wife's and her friend's take is correct, that means they murdered him.
Mm-hmm.
Then, cut off his head, maybe?
Okay. And
took it to the swamp. Now, that would be a very Florida thing to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes,
mm-hmm.
Right. Sure. But the fact that there's a video of, a hand coming out of the hedgerow makes me feel like they're trying to hide their son.
Okay.
Because maybe Gabby deserved it.
So he was reaching out to get a smoothie because he was hungry.
Right.
Okay.
Yes. But I mean, and honestly, we don't know what Gabby did to get in that situation. I'm not blaming her.
Mm-hmm.
But what if she threatened him? What if he was the victim?
Maybe she was a murderer.
Maybe you don't know. We don't know. this is why we have a trial process
Yeah.
to figure this stuff out, right? But I'm just saying, maybe he told his parents some story and they sided with him. Like, okay, we're gonna hide you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then, but see, then to have false evidence there and to throw off the police, they would have had to like planted some other person's bones and then somehow swapped the dental records.
Right.
And I brought that up to my wife, and still with a knife in her hand, she said, "You don't know their business. What if his mom is an oral surgeon?" That's true, I guess. I don't know what this, So either his parents, because it's very suspicious that the parents show up in like 30 minutes and like, oh, he's right over there.
Yeah.
We found his bones in the middle of a giant forest, like a national park. That's not easy to run across the remains of someone.
Didn't they find like 9 people?
Yeah, that's another thing. While they're looking, they find like 9 other people. Which, just think about that for a minute. If that's true, how many dead corpses are just strewn about America's woodlands?
For real, or at least in Florida.
That's like, there's got to be thousands in every square mile.
Yeah.
If like you're looking for one guy's and you find 9 corpses unrelated to the incident in question.
I've never found a single corpse and I kind of feel cheated.
Right. That's another thing that makes me think like, no, I don't. Something is fishy. You don't just find 9 corpses in one. If you found 9 corpses in one national park in Florida, someone needs to look into the problem.
Yeah. What's going on there?
So there's a bigger problem happening, right? So, either Brian Laundrie was killed by his mother and father and planted in the woods, right?
Right.
But I don't understand the motivation for that, because why wouldn't they just turn him over to the police if they were like, why did they have to murder him, right? Because now they're also in, because even if you don't like a person and you think they should be killed, it's still illegal in America to kill them. Not in self-defense, like just out of vengeance.
Right.
Or honor killing, right?
This isn't Nam.
Right.
Yeah, there are
So
rules.
now then they would have an extra problem instead of just being like, hey, we know where our son is to the police, right?
Yeah.
And then, or their parents killed some other rando and then did some mafia-style swapping of dental records. Right?
Or they could have just switched their teeth. So there might be a
Right.
toothless Brian Landry hiding in the bushes.
Yes. And I saw a black guy on YouTube, because Black Guy Conspiracy YouTube is the best.
Yeah.
Talk with that same take. He said, this dude out here running around with no teeth.
Really?
And I was like, yeah. I was like, he knew the same. He knew it was up. Because it's suspicious. It's highly suspicious.
Every good idea I have, somebody's already thought it.
Well, that's true of everything.
Yeah.
It's true of everything. There's nothing new under the sun. So, I think, personally, that neither Gabby Petito or Brian Laundrie is dead.
Okay.
I'm going to go a step above. I'm going to trump them. My wife has conspiracy. Parents killed him.
Mm-hmm.
And some of her friends do that, but some of them take the other ones, they killed someone else.
Yeah.
And then Black Guy YouTube says he's running around without teeth. And I say neither of them are dead. I'm just
All right.
trumping it all.
Okay.
Right? Because...
So if Gabby and Brian are like singing in a choir at the Super Bowl, we'll know.
Well, yeah.
Know.
Well, here's a couple of problems with it. One is a cardinal rule that I try to drill into everybody's heads is they always have to tell you. They always have to tell you.
Okay.
It's like a law of karma.
Well, have they told you?
Yes. Think about their names. Gabby Petito, Brian Laundrie.
I mean, but what does that mean they're still alive, though?
Well, it just means it's a psyop.
Well, they could have been real people that were killed under fake pretenses.
Yeah, but Gabby Petito, Gab Petito, small talk.
Mm-hmm.
And Brian was very close to Brain Laundrie, brainwashing. So it's small talk brainwashing.
Okay. Yeah.
Or brainwashing via gossip.
Right. Yeah. So
Right?
I mean, I'm with you that this might be some kind of psyop, but real people die in psyops.
Real people do die in psyops. however, right? The other thing is that Gabby Petito, as a teenager, when she was like 14, appeared in a music video commemorating the victims of Sandy Hook, who also did not die.
Yeah, that one's a little too close to home for me.
Right?
Yeah.
And the song will be re-recorded in her memory, and there's a picture of her from this video from an artist no one's ever heard of, called Deb Hinson. No one knows who that is.
Okay.
I don't.
Yeah.
And she's sitting. It's a teenage Gabby Petito, and she's sitting on a curb around some vines, and she's holding a big sign that says "I'm irreplaceable."
Mm.
And then she disappears, and the whole country gets upset about it. Right? So
It is weird.
I think that she was and is a longtime crisis actor, right?
Okay.
Who was promoted to media influencer status by whoever does these things for this purpose.
I see.
And you say, but Sumo, what gain do they have in doing this? Right? Well, I will tell you. I thought about that too, because I was like, well, what would be the point? Like, why would they fake kill a boyfriend strangling an Instagram girl?
Yeah.
And I couldn't think of a reason until I was doing a bit more reading about it, and I saw people tweeting about it. And I was like, got it. Right? I'll read you some. Someone, a Twitter user named Don Huey, said, if Brian Laundrie committed suicide, it was too easy for him. I'd much rather believe a gator got him. Lots of likes. I don't know if Brian Laundrie is dead or not, but if he isn't, I'd like to find him and kill him.
Ooh.
Thousands of likes.
Yeah.
Right. I don't know. These are different people, by the way. It's not all this one Don Huey being a homicidal maniac. I hope that the gator that ate him slowly.
Ooh. Ugh.
Right? And there's thousands of these.
Is this a loose harvesting operation?
It is a loose harvesting operation, but more than that, it's to give you an excuse to air your bloodlust.
Yeah.
Because people act nice. People live in houses, and they wear sweaters, and they eat they drink almond milk, right? But those same people also, there's certain topics that are socially allowed.
Yep.
For them to reveal their murderous nature.
Yeah.
One of those is Brian Laundrie.
Yep.
And the other one is prison rape.
Wait.
Well, because there's many suburban moms, if you talk about a felon that maybe was a rapist,
Okay.
will say something to the effect of, their eyes will sort of glaze over in a fit of rage.
Mm-hmm.
And they will say, at least he's getting the same in prison, or something like that.
Yeah. That's
have you ever heard this?
Yeah, it's kind of a thing.
It's kind of a thing.
It's like a pressure release valve for bloodlust.
It's a pressure release, but it also and people will do that. Like people did that with Afghanistan for a long time, where Afghanistan was mostly a way for people to be like, yeah, we need to kill them. Look how bad they are.
Yeah.
We need to kill them, right? And otherwise, normal people are given license socially to wish the worst possible things on other human beings.
Yeah.
And what it reveals is that they all have that in them to do at some point, right? And you say, oh, but it's justified in this instance, right? Even though in all those cases, they don't actually know these people or what they're guilty of. They're just going on stories, you know?
Yeah. I got caught up in that as a 20-year-old. I get it.
Yeah. I mean, everybody does. I used to sit there and sing, we have to go save the Pashtuns for for whoever they are.
Yeah.
I didn't know who they were.
Right.
But the Pashtuns were super important for some reason.
Yeah.
And they were being terrorized by some guy named Abdul who had kids chained to his bedpost or something.
Right.
Now, was any of that true? Probably not.
Well, did
there's
Abdul
probably a guy named Abdul in Afghanistan, sure. But other than that,
did Abdul work for the UN?
almost certainly.
Yeah. Well, there.
As Osama bin Laden did. Just FYI, he did. So, just an aside, I don't think Osama bin Laden did. I think Osama bin Laden was just one of those plants, like he was an agent.
Go back and look at that photo, supposedly of Osama dead. It's the fakest. It's the worst Photoshop. Yeah. It is pathetic.
He's not.
The source photograph has been identified for that fake photo.
And so I think what a lot of this is, because I do think that we live in that there is a real evil presence, and that the job of the evil presence is to accuse mankind and to get them to show and give in to sinful desires.
Yeah.
That this presence likes to be like, see, like he runs this story, and I don't know how it works out, like how it filters down to like human agencies that do this.
Yeah.
But at the top level, in some way, they run this Gabby Petito, this small talk brainwashing thing, and then around the world, people go, yeah, kill him.
Yeah.
And then they're like, see, it's just an angel pointing with God, like, see what they really are? And I think that's what this is. Because there's too many coincidences. Like, one, the names. 2, she was in the Sandy Hook thing. 3, his parents just show up at random and happen to find his bones, which are somehow skeletal for some reason now.
Yeah.
And then they're digging in their backyard with a backhoe. There's too many weirdo things going on here, but it gives people the ability to. It allows people to a chance to drop their mask and you see what's really underneath.
Yeah.
Because. Just, spoiler, it may be much of my opinion, but whatever. I don't think you should really wish sexual assault on anybody.
Agree.
Even people you don't like and you think deserve it.
Yeah. I mean, if you hate somebody so much that you can't, like, pray for their soul to be saved, you got a problem.
Yeah, like, I'm not saying you shouldn't lock them up if they're a danger to
like,
society.
there's a difference between justice and bloodlust hatred.
Yeah. And a lot of people very easily cross that boundary. And I think that these sorts of things exist and bubble up to as a test.
Yeah.
And if you're like, yeah, kill him. Yeah, I hope that gator does eat him, but I would have fed him piecemeal. Then I think that you failed that test.
Yeah.
I don't know. Or maybe my wife is right and his parents really did just kill him while they were chopping it with a knife. He was like, look, Mom, that would have been awkward if it's real, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
he comes home and he's like, where's Gabby? Oh, she wanted to stay a little while. And then like a week later, it's on the news that she's dead. It's like, where? Brian?
Yeah, awkward dinner.
A very awkward dinner, right? But anyway, I think that neither one of them are dead, and they just, this is the primary purpose of the Witness Protection Program, by the way, is to change the names and lives of crisis actors. That's what it's there for. And occasionally they get people that are being hunted by the mafia too.
Right.
But other than that, they just take people like Derek Chauvin and George Floyd, who are not dead, and they give them different papers, and George Floyd grows a mustache, and then he walks around going, hey, I'm Morge Lloyd. And people are like, oh, hey, Morge. He's living a great life as a grocer somewhere or something.
Yeah.
That's how it works. But yeah, that's why I want to talk about the prison rape. I don't know. Maybe that was too beleaguered a thing.
Well, that conversation could have gotten a lot uglier, so I'm sort of thankful that the segment is over it where it stands.
Yeah, I wasn't gonna go into like a whole Shawshank Redemption thing.
Yeah.
Just I just have noticed that before, like people that otherwise seem very like there's underneath their veneer is a murderous barbarian.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. There are some things that are like invitations to bloodlust and blind rage that our culture just sort of hands everybody. Yeah.
As an aside, speaking of Afghanistan, isn't it amazing how we all already stopped caring about it? There's like 20 years of war
and it's
for
gone,
financial
man.
gain.
It is gone. Straight up
and
gone.
then it was like, what?
Yeah.
That's like nothing matters. It's all ephemera.
Right.
Everything on the TV screen and the computer screen doesn't matter at all.
Poof.
People will totally forget about it in 3 months.
Yeah.
Or even 3 minutes.
Right.
They just move on. It doesn't, and getting tangled up in it is like, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, they'll forget about anything if you give them something new to be worked up about.
Yeah.
Because it's just the limitations of the human mind. You know, we can only handle so much intensity. Like, we only have so much bandwidth, and if you just fill that bandwidth with manufactured drama, we're going to forget about whatever preceded it.
Yeah, that's true. And it's another reason why worry is preposterous. Because your brain can only really worry about like 1 or 2 things at a time. But think of all the things that would be more worrisome if you only knew about them.
Yeah, scary. Well, that's the problem with internet and news and all this stuff is we learn all these scary things that we should never have learned about because they don't really matter to us.
They don't matter, and most of them aren't real.
Yeah.
And I think that's the message of today's show. We're talking about who built the moon and rods. Talk about rods.
Sweet.
And a little royalty talking about climate change.
Yeah.
The running theme is the madness, the insanity that must occur when people, like the insanity of not believing in God.
Yeah.
People just, you think like, oh, I'm Mr. Rational. And then like, if you actually take a step back and listen to people, they are like Penguin from Batman level bonkers.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, we must climb it. And then what spews out of their mouth next is we have to kill 1 billion people because population is a problem.
Yeah.
Right? It's like and then they just like, oh, okay. Right? But it's the insanity. So what should we tackle first? I think the moon, who built the moon should go last because it's a longer.
Okay.
Should we talk about the climate thing, rods, or briefly about how stupid it is that they say how birds evolved to fly?
Okay, how did they say birds evolved to fly?
Okay, I was looking for a BAP quote on this because he put it brilliantly and I couldn't find it. But so it's, when you look at the world, it's obviously designed in some way.
Yes.
I mean, it's obvious.
Right.
And we're going to move to that, who built the moon. It's just like this, like if you walked up to a door and it like had a handle that fit your hand perfectly and you could turn the knob and open the door and go through it, no one in their right mind would be like, that happened by random chance over 3 million years. Right? And yet, birds flying, the official explanation is that they used to like run downhill chasing stuff with like arms appendages.
Uh-huh.
And then their hairs on their arms slowly got thicker and thinner like feathers. At the same time, their bones got hollower to make the speediness of themselves to catch their prey.
Right.
And then they would have incremental jumps in which their longer, finer hairs would let them glide for a microsecond, and this would eventually like help them catch their mouse or whatever. And then over 50 billion years, that turned into an eagle. That's really like, if you ask like, how did birds evolve to fly? That's what it is. Because all it is, and this is why evolution is such an interesting psyop, is because the formula is all the same. It's just like, well, it happened in extremely gradual steps, each one increment. And you can do that with anything.
Right.
You can invent a story like, oh, well, before they were flying, they were running on an inclined plane, and the inclined plane got steeper and steeper.
It's the ultimate, like, Jedi hand wave.
Yeah, it is. It's like, oh, yeah, and then it's always some just so story. Like, but none of it ever makes sense. Like, how did an eyeball? Like, oh, well, there was a spot, and it could detect light. Then there was another one. And then eyeball. And that's how it goes.
Yeah, ... eyeball. Right.
Yeah, and the thing is that there's no science here.
Right.
Because in the scientific method, you have to run an experiment and do a test. And you can't do that.
Yeah.
Because, you could, and it would just fail because you can't make you don't have 100 million years.
Well,
in which to run your
It's just funny to me because this creature that they're describing, I have 13 of them that have been selectively bred by men to make eggs in my yard. And you know, they can fly a tiny amount, and they mostly just hunt and peck stuff, and sometimes they chase small bugs or snakes or mice. Mm-hmm. And if I don't guard them and protect them at all times with very elaborate defense mechanisms, they will all fall immediately as prey. I mean, they're literally, if that came about as natural evolution, that would be called an evolutionary dead end. I mean, they're great for making eggs, but as an animal, they're terrible. And even wild chickens, they can only survive in certain areas where the predatory pressure is pretty low, and they have to hide all day. Like
this is why in prehistoric
times
hunters. The chickens were 70 feet tall.
Right.
This is why they always like, oh, there used to be a giant sloth.
Yeah.
And the giant sloth, you see, that was the thing. And then also everything was just bigger.
Right.
And that makes up for it somehow. And I think they're probably, I'm not a mammoth denier. I believe in woolly mammoths. Mm-hmm. They're just another breed of elephant that we should breed back.
Yes.
Into existence.
Yeah, man.
We don't need to get the DNA Jurassic Park style. Just selectively breed elephants until they're hairy.
Yeah, sure.
We've done that with all kinds of
animals. That's the thing. It's like you can selectively breed stuff into all sorts of contortions. That doesn't mean that's the origin of all species.
Right. And but anyway, so there's that. Now that will come up more in Who Built the Moon. Mm-hmm. But now let's talk about rods.
Wait, are we gonna do Prince Charles climate change stuff?
Yeah, let's do that one too.
Okay.
But let's do Prince Charles climate change. This is I don't know. You want to play the first till he says the his part?
Yeah, I can play the first part of it. Sure.
Yeah, because Prince Charles is talking in some place in Biden.
Military style.
Hang on, let me start over. Here we go.
Yeah.
Here we need a vast military-style campaign to marshal the strength of the global private sector, with trillions at its disposal, far beyond global GDP, and with the greatest respect, beyond even the governments of the world's leaders.
Yeah, okay, I'll stop a little early right there.
Yeah.
So that was just context. That was Prince Charles speaking to the COP26 conference in Italy, hosted by the Vatican, I believe. And he's talking about the need for a vast military campaign to, what did he say, marshal the resources and the energy of the private sector around the world to combat climate change. And he says
which is an insane statement.
Yeah, like there's so much craziness in this one little clip.
Military campaign to marshal the private sector. Which, by the way, that's what fascism is.
Yes.
That's the exact definition.
Exactly.
Continue.
No, like, you could go through this statement sentence by sentence, and here's the thing, like, you can, maybe the listener is thinking, okay, I played this tiny clip out of the speech where he says, what did he say? Trillions of dollars at his disposal. The thing is like, I listened to the whole speech a couple of times. It never gets any clearer. It's very cryptic.
No.
Who is this his? Why does he have more money? Here, let me just play it again and just listen to who's he talking about here.
Keep in mind, he says, now you might think this is a gaffe, but he says in his disposal.
Yeah. I mean, it's very clear. This is the dude's an expert speaker. Okay, I'm just going to play it again. Hang on.
Here we need a vast military-style campaign to marshal the strength of the global private sector, with trillions at its disposal, far beyond global GDP, and with the greatest respect.
Okay, so the his is never defined here, and it's really weird. Like, he didn't just accidentally say that. And there's other things in the speech that sort of go unexplained. But even okay, so substitute a different pronoun, okay? What he's claiming is that some entity has at their disposal more money than all the world's combined GDP. And all the governments of the world. Who is he talking about? Who is he talking about?
Some people have said the private sector, right? But that's the thing. That's not true of the private sector.
No, the private sector is the GDP.
Right.
Yeah.
It doesn't have more than the collective GDP of the world.
Right.
That's insane.
Yeah.
What? And then because at first I thought, oh, he just meant to say its disposal. And it sounded like he said his. Like it's like the private sector, you know?
Yeah.
But then I was like, but wait a minute, the private sector actually doesn't have more than the combined global GDP.
No, like there's a difference between gross and net here. Like my company doesn't have its gross revenue at its disposal. It has its net income at its disposal. Like the GDP is a gross number. That doesn't make sense to say that that's the private sector he's talking about.
And even that, the government, they can just print the money. They don't.
Right.
What are you talking about?
Right.
They don't.
Like, how do you have more money than governments that can just print unlimited money?
Right. And they don't even. None of it makes any sense. Right.
Yeah.
Because and so you're like, well, who's he talking about that has this trillions of dollars more than and the whole thing is like, well, overpopulation is going to be a problem. So we need to marshal a military campaign to get the private sector to something, save the polar bears or whatever, who are still fine, by the way.
Yeah.
They're
doing okay.
The polar bears have never been in a problem at all. Like in the early 2000s, I remember they used to show pictures of polar bears like on a piece of ice floating as if they were stranded.
Right. That was such a friggin' scam, man.
Because the ice caps were melting.
They can swim.
And the whole time I was going, polar bears can swim. They're excellent swimmers.
He's on there hunting seals.
Polar bears can swim for like 500 miles.
It's ridiculous. Oh.
They can swim for days on end.
And people fell for it. They're still falling for that. Let me play the whole clip so people get the whole. So just listen to this and listen to all the parts of this that are crazy. Okay, here we go.
Here we need a vast military-style campaign to marshal the strength of the global private sector, with trillions at its disposal, far beyond global GDP, and with the greatest respect, beyond even the governments of the world's leaders.
Pause.
It offers the...
That's also another thing. The private sector doesn't have the greatest respect of even the world. Like, a lot of people don't like the private. What
he's saying is he's saying with respect to the world's leaders, whoever this is has more money.
I don't know.
Has more money than you. Yeah. So
okay, keep going.
For context, all the leaders of the world are assembled there. Biden's there. Boris Johnson's there. They're all there listening to this speech. That's who he's talking to. Okay, here's the rest of the clip.
Okay, let's go. Okay.
Beyond even the governments of the world's leaders, it offers the only real prospect of achieving fundamental economic transition.
Transition to what?
Yeah. Yes. Exactly.
Transition to what, Prince Charles? Oh, man. I'm trying not to give in to the bloodlust right now.
I know. And this is
I'm going to pray for his soul.
This is... Yeah, that's the challenge. But the speech goes on for a while, and it gets... It's a strange speech. But basically he's suggesting that basically the militaries of the world must unite to fight climate change via the private sector somehow.
Yeah, the thing, he didn't propose anything comprehensible. If somebody understood it, it's because they have more information than what he gave in the speech.
Right. They're at the creepy table.
Yeah, that was like the promo for the creepy table right there.
Yeah, and so I don't in some sense doubt that they will try to do more authoritarian stuff and probably succeed because they've been successful so far. Because people are not, they just do whatever TV says. But it's very I also don't know that it's my same thing of like they're going to do it, but I also don't know that it matters. Like,
well, it's going to be. It matters to people that are going to buy the narrative. It will mess them up.
Right. But this is the insanity. You can only buy this if you don't. This is why it's the insanity of people that don't believe in God. You can only believe that because he also ties this into evolution. Like this is, if you listen to the speech, he's like, it only because it's 40 billion years old or whatever, and the planet has evolved, and now we're hurting it. Right?
Yeah.
Well, you only can buy this narrative that the oceans are rising and going to sink, even though go to the beach, it's the same place every year after year.
Yeah.
It isn't happening.
Right.
But people believe it because that sort of makes sense, I guess, if you believe in a random cosmos. Which is like where chickens learn to fly by growing progressively thinner hair and jumping down hills.
Yeah.
Over 100 million years.
Well, a thing people have to realize is that a civilization, a controlling regime, a worldview that buys the theory of evolution will eventually mass murder people.
Everybody.
Because applied evolution is eugenics, and eugenics is just killing the wrong people. Or killing the people that you don't want.
Right.
I mean, that's really all it is. So if the leaders of the world buy into evolution, they will murder millions of people. It's like a fish in water. I mean, that's what's going to happen.
And
so like
than
look
that,
for it.
Millions of people will sign up to be murdered.
Yes, or sterilized or whatever.
Yeah, right. And right now they're doing it voluntarily by convincing a bunch of people that they're bad and shouldn't have kids, and that if they do, their kids will grow up and make carbon.
Yeah.
He talks about we must put a price on carbon. How insane!
Yeah.
That carbon is one of the most.
We're carbon-based life forms.
Right. You may as well say we need to put a price on breathing.
Yeah. Well, that is what he's saying.
Because you breathe out carbon every day.
Yeah.
Like that's half of your respiratory cycle.
Right. And if you can't pay your taxes, then I guess you get your breath repossessed.
Yeah, I mean, which would be, you could easily write a science fiction novel dystopia that was very believable.
Right.
In that vein.
No, we're not murdering him. We're repossessing his breath for failure to pay carbon taxes.
Right. And he didn't plant a tree to offset his carbon or whatever.
Yeah.
So now he has to go.
Yeah.
The idea that carbon is bad for planet Earth is so asinine. It's because it's like, oh, you mean the thing that all the life is made of?
Yep.
Like all of it? Like, yeah, that's really bad for life. And then it doesn't even make sense in their own models, because if you go back and you talk about the Pleistocene era and stuff, all of them agree the carbon content was higher.
Yep.
And there was more thriving jungles. Like it doesn't.
Yeah.
Plants like carbon. That's what they eat.
Right.
Like that's what they. But so you can only buy this narrative, and this can only make sense if your brain is broken by rejecting the fundamental premise. You look out at the world, you look out at the moon, and you say, that was just. That's how that came to be.
Yep.
There was a big something, and then moon, which is
the Big Bang and evolution are the psyop upon which all other psyops are based. In sort of
they are
at like a philosophical level. Yeah.
At a philosophical level, and because it all is it says basically the cosmos existed by random chance.
Right, because you have to kill you have to kill God, and you have to detach people from God before you can deceive them.
Yes.
And so how do you do that? You start with the Big Bang and evolution.
Right.
And everything else flows from there. Once you've accomplished that.
And maybe the shape of the earth.
Maybe.
Just to throw,
I'll give you a
just
maybe
to make
on
our
that
entire argument sound stupid.
yeah.
Now, just maybe. Look, have you been to space, listener? No, you haven't. So how do you know what the shape of the Earth is, huh?
It's a good question.
Just saying. You don't know. You don't ever been there. Anyway, yes. So, let's talk about who built the moon.
I thought we were talking about rods.
Let's leave rods to the end.
Okay.
Let's leave rods to the end. So who built the moon? This is the quintessence, because they bring up a bunch of good points about the moon.
Are you talking about the song or the film?
The book.
This is a book called Who Built the Moon. Okay.
There's a book, a movie, and a song, all of which are unrelated to each other. Are you having problems?
I'm stretching my back.
What's wrong with your back?
I'm having back problems lately.
Oh, man. I need to get Emmanuel Kingman to do a psychic back fix.
I'm afraid of psychic back healings.
Hey, man, it was good. I don't know.
I don't want it. I just need to do more kettlebell swings. Albert Einstein reprimanded me recently about that.
So there's this book called Who Built the Moon by some people. Oh, let me look up their names. Because you should say their names, right? Christopher Knight and Alan Butler.
All right.
Who Built the Moon? And Who Built the Moon? Well, I'll just read you the first sentence to give you an idea of what it's about. For most people, the suggestion the moon could be an artifact is as sensible as saying it is made of green cheese. So the idea of Who Built the Moon is that the moon is an artificial construct.
Ooh.
Right? And they bring up a bunch of good points about the moon, but my thing with this is, and then they go off into insanity land and suggest that it is built by humans from the future in a closed time loop. Right? But I was like, all of his arguments were making really good sense, but then because he's like, and we know it can't be God that brought this about by some conscious thing, then it must be time loop trapped human beings who created the conditions for their own evolution. What? Right? Which is the only logical answer.
I mean, I guess if you start with the assumption that God didn't do it.
Right, if you start the assumption that there is no deity, no divine, and then you look at the moon honestly.
Yeah.
The only way you can come up with it is that someone built it, and the only thing that you have that's smart enough to potentially have done so is us.
Well, okay, hang on. Why?
Yes.
What's their case for the moon being an artifact?
Okay. Well, he starts off with the thing that I've brought up many times, which is eclipses. Like, the idea that the moon is exactly...
Yeah.
From our perspective, the same size as the sun. The odds of against that happening are, I think, he cites some NASA scientist in there where you look at all the moons that they have, you know, and what the odds of that are like 1 in 10 to the 20,000th.
So you're saying it's relatively exactly the same size as the sun from our perspective, such that when there's an eclipse, we can observe the corona of the sun.
Right.
Okay.
I mean, they're the same size.
Right. Yeah.
Because supposedly the moon is 400 times smaller, but also the sun is 400 times farther away.
Right. So
isn't that very convenient?
It is very convenient. Yes, almost by design.
Yeah. Isaac Asimov, the guy that wrote I, Robot.
Yeah.
He said it was. He described that visual alignment as being the most unlikely coincidence imaginable.
Yeah.
And he's correct.
Yeah.
And of course, this is only puzzling if you assume that it's all there by random chance. It's only as a problem. Like, he's like, this has puzzled experts for decades. You know, like, how could this be?
Yeah.
And it's like, well, if you just said, oh, well, it's obviously there's some great mind at the center of the universe. And then they're like, well, no, that can't be it. It has to be time travel people. We live in a computer simulation.
Yeah.
See? This is a video game. And anything is more acceptable.
Right.
Than God, because that, if you have God, then you have like a moral, you can be judged. And that's the whole purpose of getting rid of the idea.
Yeah.
Is so people don't feel judged for their actions.
Right. They're escaping judgment. That's it. Exactly.
That's all it is.
Yeah.
That's all they're trying to do. And because it doesn't make any sense, right? In fact, he goes, in this book, he talks about there are two kinds of objects in the world. Those that are here because of random forces of the universe, which we call nature, again, random, or those that were manufactured by human hands, right? But by some absolutely incomprehensible quirk of nature, the moon manages to be precisely the same size as the sun in the sky, but also to precisely imitate the perceived annual movements of the sun each month. Did you know this?
I guess it hadn't occurred to me.
Yes, when the sun is at its lowest and weakest in midwinter, the full moon is at its highest and brightest. And in midsummer, when the sun is at its highest and brightest, the moon is at its weakest.
Oh.
Right, it's exactly a mirror opposite of each other all the time. He says, if you want to understand how extraordinary this doppelganger effect is, stand on a hill or open plain and film the sun at midwinter sunset, at the spring equinox, again at midsummer, and again at the autumn equinox. Then on those same dates, film the moon setting, and you will see they both go down at the same point on the horizon at the equinox, which is true.
Whoa.
They line up at the equinox and they set in the same place. Now, what are the odds that it not only has the ability to do eclipses, but it does that? Just random. It's literally beyond astronomical.
Yeah.
Right? And so he says here in the book, it would be easy to dismiss these sun mimicking performances by saying that it's simply a consequence of the moon's distance from the earth and its orbital characteristics, which is what most scientifically people will say. Well, this does that. It's a consequence of its distance from the earth and its orbital characteristics. But that's the same.
That's nonsense.
Right. And in the book, he says that's just saying all they're saying is it is so because it is so.
Exactly. Yeah. They're not making a case.
It's like, oh, well, because it is.
Yeah.
Because it is. Right? It follows that solar eclipses, so he goes into a little bit of math there, but solar eclipses can only occur when the moon passes through the plane of the ecliptic and the sun's light is blocked by the moon. These points of intersection happen twice for each lunar orbit and are known as nodes. Right? And these nodes appear to move slowly around the background of the stars, giving the impression of moving backwards through the calendar, occurring 19.618 days earlier per year. Okay. And this cycle completes every 18.618 years, which amounts to a surprisingly neat 6,800 days. And if you remember our show about numerology,
yeah,
it ties in a lot about that. Like, these numbers recur over and over again. And this was the so-called Soros cycle, or that node cycle is related, which is the periodicity of the recurrence of eclipses.
Okay.
Which reoccurs every 6,585 days. And the curious thing is, he talks about this in the book, the ancient Mesopotamian people knew that and recorded it and had very detailed records of it.
That's gnarly.
So my question, as an aside, is if history is how we're told, how could these people have possibly known
right
about a cycle that was 6,585 years in length? You'd have to be keeping records or have advanced mathematics, like extremely advanced scientific of the stars, to know that.
Yep.
And yet somehow they did. So I don't think that that's just another point that it's probably not like that. So humans have been thinking about the moon for a long time. And In fact, the oldest lunar calendar we have is estimated to be 25,000 years old. It's a bone engraved in France, and it has markings on it which match up with a 2-month lunar calendar. Right? And he talks about like how the moon was perceived as like a lunar goddess and how it's tied up with like feminine menstrual cycles and all this stuff, which is also a coincidence. Like the moon, that's where month comes from, and the word menses comes from moon.
Oh,
same thing. So does month, by the way. A month is the same as a month. A lot of people know that. But so it's not only tied up with the sun and like with the seasons of the earth, like the harvest moon and all that, but it's also tied up with human biology. Right? Like the female menstrual cycle is the same length.
Yeah, I guess I always took it for granted that the month and the moon and the menstrual cycle are all synced up. I never really thought about it, but yeah, that's pretty stunning.
Yeah, it's very stunning, which is why the moon has always been considered feminine.
Yeah.
The sun masculine. But so again, so you stack up that on top of this doppelganger effect where they inverse each other. The fact that they are 400 times closer, 400 times farther away. The fact that they it's related to human biology. And you get, when people seriously consider this, the Harvard-Smithsonian, Irwin Shapiro, the director of the Harvard-Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics, once when he was contemplating all these things, said the best explanation for the moon is observational error. The moon does not exist. It could not be that. All of those coincidences. Like, if you believe it's random chance, right? And he's being tongue in cheek,
right?
But he was like, but there's no.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Like all of these coincidences are insane, right? And so people have noticed these things for a long time. And they attribute it to the work of God or the gods, because ancient people are like, this is a lot of coincidences. This thing really is tracking the sun and us and everything. And so people have observed the moon for a long time and thought about a lot of things about the moon. Like, for instance, Plutarch, he wrote a book called On the Face of the Moon's Orb. On the Face in the Moon's Orb. We talked about the apparent face in the moon.
Yeah.
And he suggested the markings on the moon, like the different gray splotches, were caused by deep recesses too deep to reflect sunlight. And then it may have mountains, river valleys, and even speculated that people might live there. Mm-hmm. Right? And the Hindu people also did these sort of things. And there's all this big history of like, how did the moon get there and what's up there? And there was a lot of them. But by the middle of the 1970s, all theories about the way the moon had formed were running into trouble. Because there were all these coincidences you have to explain about how they could happen. Right? Like, how could it be this way? Our moon is very unique in several respects. And this created a virtually unthinkable situation in which this one guy says, well, we were having a problem in which experts had to stand up in public and admit they simply didn't know why the moon was there. And that was a problem, right? In fact, William Hartman, a science writer in the 80s, in his book, The Origin of the Moon, said neither the Apollo astronauts, the lunar vehicles, nor all the king's horses or all the king's men could assemble enough data to explain the circumstances of the moon's birth. Again, if you assume it's all just random.
Yeah. It's a
problem. Trying to explain this, you go into insanity upon insanity. And out of this miasma of people being worried about not being able to explain the moon came a solution known as the Big Whack theory. The Big Whack.
Big Whack?
Yeah, the Big Whack, like whack.
Okay.
Because all science can ever do in cosmology is just pretend things hit each other really hard. And that's an explanation. Yeah. Big Bang, Big Whack, supernova.
Yeah.
Who knows, man?
Just
It
keep adding
blew up.
either time or energy, and eventually your problem
Right.
is solved. Right.
Right. They just say, and then it was billions of years, and bingo, bango, bango, ta-da. Right? And that's all that they do. So this idea of the big whack came out of this the Soviet Union scientists. And they were working on this idea that the moon was made of millions, and it started as a collection of millions of tiny asteroids that all came together because of gravity, which they call planetesimals. But that really wasn't working, and so this American scientist named Hartman and his friend D.R. Davis suggested the moon rather came into being as the result of a collision between two planetary bodies. So there was the Earth, and it gets rammed into a rogue planet at least as big as Mars.
Whoa.
And then these two hit each other really hard, right? And this somehow makes jets of matter be ejected from the mantles of both bodies. This matter was then thrown into orbit, where it eventually became the moon. And this, dear listener, is the leading theory of the existence of the moon in academia.
But that doesn't explain any of all these coincidences.
None of them. Zero of them. But this is their best hope at the moment, is that basically a different Mars hit the Earth and is now part of the Earth, and the pieces that aren't are the moon. And that's what they tell you. That's the big whack theory. Right?
Lame.
And as you said, none of it, but that's science. And he says the suggestion seems to have many merits. First, it appears to address the greatest puzzle that the recovery of moon rocks has thrown up. How is it the composition of the moon is so similar to that of Earth? And of course, could it be because the moon rocks just came from here? Of course this is why lies break science. Because now they have to, just like they now have to teach specifically in engineering school how jet fuel can melt steel beams, even though they can't get it to work in experiment.
Yeah.
Like, well, it must because it did, right? And then they teach you that, and then engineers go out with these crazy ideas in their heads. They've been taught wrong. Now they have to come up with a big whack theory, mainly to explain why the rocks we recovered from the moon look just like the rocks on Earth.
Yeah, that was that was like a big scandal, I remember, because all these supposed moon rocks were being tested, and they were like, no, this is just granite or whatever.
Yeah.
You know,
and they're like, oh, well, that just means that means that the moon is made of the same stuff.
Right.
Which means it came off the Earth, which means it had to have been hit by another planet, and that's what it all comes from, is this lie that people brought rocks back from the moon.
Cope.
Right. Yeah. It's just, this is why science doesn't work anymore. Because they're just producing nonsense, because all the data they're trying to explain is just made up in a big lie. Like all of the global warming data is just made up.
This is a big element of stuck culture.
Right.
Yeah.
We're trying to prove things are real that never existed. Much like Gabby Petito or George Floyd. They never were real. It's like the moon landing. It's just a lie. If you can get a lie to go, you can make billions of dollars.
True.
If you get a lie to take, right? We're like, just imagine all the false religious people in the world who've been like, well, listen, I'm the only way that you got to give me money. Been done 1,000 times.
Yep.
So the same thing is like, the planet's going to die unless you give us money. The same, if you can get a lie to go, you know? And so all of this is made up because you can't just look at the moon and be like, oh, well, obviously something very intelligent did this. Which is clearly that's the most obvious explanation. You know?
Yeah, of course it is. Yeah.
And so, it's just, so eventually that theory gained ground. At first it was like so crazy. It was like probable. But, people did computer models, and then they were like, well, look, it was the computer model. And they were like, oh, okay, it's a computer model. Big whack theory. was born. And people really, that's the main going theory at the moment. Because of a woman named Dr. Robin Kennup, who's now the assistant director of the Department of Space Studies at Colorado. She wrote her PhD on the Big Whack theory. And her early results led to the conclusion that the impact would have actually led to a swarm of moonlets rather than the moon.
Okay.
But then she did some more computer models and said, oh, it would be the moon. Which, again, isn't science.
Well, you just adjust the parameters until you get the result you want.
Right.
Yeah.
Until you get I keep saying this, but it must be said. Changing computer parameters until you get the result that you already have isn't science. It isn't anything. It's nothing. You have a result already, the moon, and you're just tweaking variables to get the moon to happen in your computer. That's the inverse of the scientific method. It's anything that happens in a computer model isn't science. You know? But again, this is one of those things you can't actually test. So, despite the fact the Big Whack theory is now generally accepted, it has lots of problems, not least of all recognized by Robin Kennup herself. She admits that one of the key aspects of the theory doesn't make any sense. Right? Which is, people pointed out that if an object that massive impacted the Earth, it could not have failed to have sped up the rotation of the Earth to a level far beyond, like we'd be,
right.
You know, if something that big hit us, we'd be, and so what did they do? Science was given this thing, like, okay, clearly not God or anything. There's no intelligence here. It's all random.
Yep.
And we know that because we got the moon rocks from the set with Stanley Kubrick. And they came here and it's from the Earth. And so it had to be from us. So that means a Mars-sized planet, which doesn't exist anymore, but used to, ran into us in the thing. Now, the odds of the planets and the orbits hitting each other are like so small because space is huge and the planets are tiny in comparison, but never mind that. And it hits each other, and then it lines up so that it's 400 times smaller than the sun, but 400 times closer, so that it cancels out, and it goes down at the same places on the equinox because it does. And that is good. But the only problem with this is that if it hit, it would be we'd be spinning faster. How do we solve it? Big Whack 2. Big Whack 2. And this is really what they say.
Planetary Boogaloo.
Big Whack 2, Planetary Boogaloo. This is really what they say, so, okay, the Earth was hit and it was spinning out real fast, but then another one came and it hit us in the other direction and exactly canceled out the momentum from the first one. And then, but somehow without spawning an extra moon, they don't talk about that one, but there you go.
Please, science, help me escape God's judgment. No.
Right. Exactly.
I'll buy anything you're selling.
I'll buy anything you're selling if you tell me I can just do sodomy and it's fine.
It's true.
Listen. I'll believe in a chicken jumping down a hill, flapping its long hair to chase Gabby Petito into a swamp. If you just let me meet up with a guy behind a dumpster at Arby's and say that it's fine.
This is the truest episode we've ever done.
Right, and that's all it's ever been.
Yeah, man.
Like, listen, if you'll just tell me that I'm a monkey,
yep,
so that when I go on my genocidal rage about prisoners needing to be raped, I don't feel like it's any different than a chimpanzee ripping the fingers off of one of its brothers.
Bingo.
Just tell me that, because I don't want to feel bad.
Yep.
About, don't lay anything on me like I might be something more than an animal, please. And that's all it's ever been, right? And so the legitimate scientific consensus at the moment is that the moon was formed because a big planet ran into the Earth, and then that spewed out some stuff that turned into the moon, which exactly matched up all these coincidences, and also female reproductive cycle. But then it was spinning too fast, so another one hit it from the other direction and canceled it out, so it all worked neat as can be.
There's no escape from judgment, scientists. You have to repent and believe in Christ.
Right. That's now, to their credit, in this book, they said this explanation smacks of desperation, which is
yeah, it sure does.
Okay, right. The other thing is that if the Big Whack theory is correct and all this other stuff that they do is correct, like carbon dating and stuff, the moon rocks they brought back, which again are just from like the Sahara Desert, so it doesn't matter. But if you pretend they're from the moon, they have the exact same oxygen isotope signatures as those from Earth, which, if you believe that the material was created the way they say, means it has to have been created at basically the same distance from the sun. But so that would mean, what that would mean is that if the oxygen isotopes on the moon are the same from the moon rocks, and you pretend that they're not from Stanley Kubrick's set, that would mean that the planet that hit us to make the moon also had to be at the same distance from the, so it had to be a co-orbital with us, and then somehow hit us. Because if it was further away or closer, it would have different oxygen isotopes.
Yeah.
Right? Which, again, in the book they say doesn't sound. Which is why people that really look at the moon, like that guy at the research center, said the best explanation for the moon is that we've observed it wrong. Right? Because none of the best thing we have right now is that it was we just had big whacks.
Yeah. Right?
And then additionally, people have looked at the Big Whack theory and said, well, yeah, okay, maybe that would form a moon, but then not all of it would, and you just have constant, for millennia and eons, this raining down of ejecta chunks onto the planet, killing everything over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
So, lots of problems with the Big Whack theory. But that's all they have right now is Big Whack. And then Big Whack 2. Despite the Big Whack having more holes in it than a rusty colander, it's just believed. Just believed, right? So the moon is bigger than it should be also, and apparently older and much lighter in mass than it. Like if you compare our moon to all the other moons in the solar system, ours is bigger relative to its planet. It's lighter than it should be, and it's apparently older. It occupies an orbit that is so extraordinary, all existing explanations for its presence are fraught with difficulties, and none of them could be considered even remotely watertight, right? So then, again, this book, they take the reasonable stance of being like, well, the moon has a lot of coincidences that are not explained. And this Big Whack theory is crazy. But then, because these authors cannot bring themselves to not want to look at pornography, they have to say, well, that means the moon had a manufacturer, and the moon, then they have a bullet point list of things that this must mean. The moon was manufactured from lighter materials taken from a young Earth. A. The moon was made as an incubator to foster life on Earth. B. The manufacture of the moon seeded life on Earth. C. And then evolution as described by Darwin proceeded, basically. So they're proposing that what they call an unknown creative agent, a UCA, created the moon specifically for the conditions of life to be so that people would evolve. And then they seeded life. And then, quote, the manufacturer of the moon left deliberate messages intended to be read by humans at the point in time when they evolved to be able to read them to draw attention to what they had done. And this is where your mind goes if you honestly look at the evidence but refuse to stop looking at pornography. Right? As an aside, the disappearing canals on Mars.
What?
I want to talk about this because he brings this up basically as for a second. In the 1850s, people had telescopes that were pretty good.
Okay.
And well, there was and what they started doing is they would look at Mars. They would see canals on Mars, canali. Italian astronomer Secchia, he first announced this in 1858, that he had looked at Mars through a powerful telescope and seen what looked to be striations, like straight lines, that he said were some sort of either natural or maybe artificial canal system.
Okay.
1877, Giano Virginio Saffarelli said the same thing, and he produced drawings. And people all over the 1800s, it became the perceived scientific wisdom that on Mars were canals that could be seen with a telescope. So much so that an astronomer named Lowell he went on to have a distinguished career in astronomy based on this. He would go on, and there's a observatory named after him in Flagstaff, Arizona, to this day. And he said that it must have liquid water on it because of these canals, and he did all these things about it has an average temperature and so forth and so on. But this was believed basically until the first Mars rover things went there. People thought there was like going to be water on Mars, right? Because there were canals. And then they got there and they said, "Oh, there's no canals, and there's no straight lines on the planet at all."
Huh.
And so you have to, and so then in the book they say, "Well, we have to conclude that either the Martians have camouflaged them over the last century, or infinitely more likely, generations of astronomers were just imagining things." I always thought that was weird. I've heard about that before. This is just an aside from the moon. But it's weird that, like, the scientific consensus, they all said, like, oh, yeah, if you look through a telescope, you can see canals on Mars for, like, 150 years.
Right.
And then they were like, oh, well, I guess we're just imagining it. like that, it's like when I saw the moon disappear last night.
But there's a robot there now, guys. Trust me.
There's a robot there now. It's definitely not on Devon Island in Canada.
Yeah.
Which looks exactly like the moon. That's definitely not what's happening. So, although the greatest scientific minds of the time all agreed, if you look through a telescope, and they all did this regularly, look through these, you'd see canals and channels that appeared to be so straight and linear, they were forced to conclude they were artificially made. Mm-hmm. And that was believed from like 1850 to 1970.
Yeah.
That was like the thing. Then they got there and they're like, never mind. So, that, I don't know, either it's still true. I don't have a telescope powerful enough to view this myself. If I look through my telescope, Mars looks like just a better, redder circle, right?
Yeah.
It's not. I need a better one to test this myself. But either that's still true, and there are channel-like structures on Mars, and they've made up the Mars rover story, and Devon Island didn't have channels on it, so they just said, "Oh, it's not there anymore," or the other, perhaps weirder explanation is that Mars itself has been Mandela affected and changed some way, the shape of its surface, which I wouldn't have believed until last night when I saw the moon vanish in the span of 5 minutes. Which, who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows at this point? And so he goes on, he talks about the various coincidences of the moon and this unknown creative agency. And eventually, like I said, he comes to the conclusion that it's probably not aliens, because we don't have any scientific explanation of evidence of aliens. They're just, it's just a theory at the moment, a hypothesis. The only things we know of that are smart enough to do it would be us. And then, so it must be us by process of elimination. And then you say, well, wait a minute. You said the moon was necessary for life to start. And he says, yes. So that means that it's in some sort of closed time loop that just loops back on itself forever. Like, we're here because we're here. We exist because we created the existences of our own evolution.
Man, talk about mental gymnastics. Right.
Here are some of the coincidences Because he also notes that the moon, as we talked about in our numerology show, lines up with megalithic units of measurement.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's round numbers, the moon and the sun, if you measure by miles and whatever. So some of the other mathematical messages in the moon: the number of rotations in an Earth year, 366. The number of megalithic yards in 1 megasecond of arc, 366. The percentage and size of the moon to the Earth, 366%. Ratio of the size of the moon to that of the sun, 400. Number of distances from the moon closer to the Earth and the sun, 1/400th. Number of megalithic yards in 1 megasecond of arc, 400,000. So again, this is 400. Number of kilometers the Earth turns on its axis every day, 4,000. Number of kilometers the moon turns on its axis every day, 400. So if you use, no matter what unit you're using, if you're consistent, there's all these, like the sidereal days in one lunar orbit is 27.322. The percentage of the Earth, the percentage size Earth to moon is 27.322.
Oh.
The number of Earth diameters across the diameter of the sun, 109.25. The number of solar diameters across the Earth's orbit, 109.25. The ratio of the Earth to that of the sun, 109.28, which is very close. That's within the margin of error. So it's like over and over again, this coincidences that are staggering, right? And then they just say, like, well, I guess it's
obviously humans caught in a time loop. Time-traveling humans.
It's obviously
creating
themselves. A video game.
Yeah.
We live in a video game.
Right.
That's the only explanation.
Naturally.
Right. So the book is good because he does bring up a lot of interesting things about the moon that you probably never thought of. And someone did make the moon.
Oh, I'm going to straight up buy this book. Just to repeat this episode over and over again in my mind. It'd be great.
Yeah. It's all of it is just because people want to do things they know that are wrong.
Yeah. And
if they will accept anything you will tell them. If no matter how nonsensical, they will think that Florida is sinking into the sea at the same time that everyone there is dying of COVID. The same time. And even though you go there and you sit at the beach and you're like, it's not sinking and everyone here is not coughing up their lungs. But no, it is. It is. I need polyamory and weed. And for that, Florida has to sink. And we're going to sink it, by God. We're going to make the genocide happen if it doesn't happen. You understand?
I mean, you joke, but they're
that is what it is.
I think they're really trying to do it.
That is what it is. And you have to, and I mean, everyone does this to a degree. We're all rationalizing our behavior by saying, oh, it's okay because of XYZ. But that's what I mean. This is, once you see it, it's like, oh, okay, right. This is why people believe these crazy things. The only reason is so you don't have to feel bad when you do things that are bad.
Yeah. That's
all rationalism and science is. That's why most of the early rationalists were all perverts, like Sigmund Freud.
Yep.
Everybody. I mean, they're just... But not to totally bash on science, I also want to take the paranormal community and say, we also do this. Talk about rods for just a minute at closing.
Okay.
Are you familiar with rods?
No.
Well, rods were the stupidest thing that ever happened in the paranormal community. They were so dumb. Rods came about when I was like 8, which is about how long I've been paying attention to this sphere. And I remember I was fascinated with them at the age of 8.
Right.
Because I was 8. And people presented it as if it could be a real thing. But the moment you had any critical thought at all, and there were like groups devoted to studying rods.
Oh, I remember. I know what this is now.
There were T-shirts. There were shows on television.
Yeah, man.
It was so stupid. Why don't you play the clip from like 97 or whatever?
Okay.
I don't know when this ad was.
Here comes the clip.
Thousands of bizarre images captured all over the world. Mysterious creatures that live between blinks of the eye.
What are they? That's the tougher question.
Some think they are visitors from another dimension.
Of these things that appear to be phasing in and out.
Some fear that they pose a significant threat.
And it looked like a missile.
History suggests there may be a link to a real animal.
The most plausible proto-pterygote would look quite like many of the pictures of frogs.
Missile, photographic anomaly, or something from another world. A Monster Quest investigation may finally reveal the truth.
It could open up a whole new door to aerodynamics.
The high-speed video camera will be recording at 2,000 frames per second.
You guys.
I couldn't help but laughing.
That was some hype, man.
It's so stupid. Okay, so rods were a thing that only appeared on camera.
Yep.
And the idea, here's what happened. Say you were taking back in the day when you had a camera that was not on your iPhone. You had to get like a camera specifically for the purpose of taking a home video.
Sure.
And you've got it, and it weighs like 20 pounds, and it's on your shoulder, right? And you're videotaping the birthday party, and then you play it back, and something goes across the screen, and you're like, what was that? It looked weird. And you slow it down, and it looks like this undulating long sky worm. In fact, they would sometimes call them sky worms or sky ribbons. Imagine with flutters on the side. Like maybe
Yeah, it was like a
might have.
rod with like undulating ribbons down either side of it.
Yes. And it would zoom past, and sometimes there'd be multiple of them, and no one would see them at the time, but then afterwards, when they were videotaped, they're like, what are these rods? Look at them. And they were coming, and then eventually people would talk about it, and the internet was just getting started, and so people were using that to fuel their insanity, and they were passing around photos on Usenet chats and video clips of their rod. And there were rods in Brazil, and there were rods in Germany, and there were rods all over the United States, and at birthday parties all over the world, and in every home movie, there was just rods showing up again and again. And there were whole like paranormal groups devoted to it. Like one guy started something called, he was trying to mimic MUFON, which is the Mutual UFO Network.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, if any of you are out of work, MUFON is usually, if you look on Indeed.com or whatever, they're usually hiring people to do local UFO investigations for people that report things, but they only pay you like $15 a day. It's not much money. It has to be a labor of love. But he was trying to make like a rods MUFON, and he had hats, and it was there was like National Geographic was in on it, and it was a thing, right? Well, and the explanations were everything from aliens to interdimensional time travelers and so on. And this was a sign that they were coming to save us or something. There was also like an apocalyptic scenario. Like this was somehow connected to like the coming of the ripping apart of the dimensions, and we're all going to see the higher dimensional beings come down. So it was like a little bit of Q.
That's heavy.
Q.
Yeah.
It was wild. And again, as an 8-year-old, I was like, this is pretty cool. I think I maybe watched this exact video when I was 8, sitting in the cow pasture house after my dad had told me about the things that existed in directions I couldn't look. And so I would sit there and I'd be like, oh man, there are rods, right? Just like when I was like 15, I thought we had to help the Pashtuns.
Right.
Because the TV made it seem like a serious deal. But do you remember what this actually turned out to be when they got high-speed cameras?
Yes.
So when they got high-speed cameras and tested this, what it was moths flying across the artifact on old TV shows where like the wheel would seem like it was spinning backwards.
Yeah.
Because the frame rate of the film was a little behind, And so you'd be capturing the wheel like before it made a complete turn.
Yeah.
It was basically that.
It was the
with a
biggest
moth.
letdown. Oh, man.
And so, like, basically, it was the trail of images of a moth, like, strung together, superimposed on each other by the film.
And like a big grasshopper or locust kind of thing would do the same thing.
Yeah, that made this undulating rod-like pattern artifact on the film. And after they did this, the rods community did what everyone does when presented with evidence that their belief system is nonsense. They doubled down and said, no way. The rods are real. It can't be grasshoppers, because then I'm a big dum-dum for having spent $5,000 last year to fly out to Joshua Tree to talk about the rods conference. Right? Which is what those sorts of people do. But it was so compelling because people could just reproduce it because they just got normal speed cameras and film moths going past. And at the proper distance, it looked like a rod. Like, oh, look, it's just a moth. This worldwide craze about we're coming to be saved by evangelical undulating rod beings.
Yep.
Has spawned purely from improper frame rate videos of bugs. Right? And I think that was maybe my first red pill. When I was like 8, and I was like, oh, this is just bugs. And I was like 10. Like, oh, right. Adults can be stupid and say really stupid things for a long time and get really invested in it. And then I've always carried that with me. It's like, oh, this is just another... Like last night, like I said, the moon appeared to vanish from the sky. But maybe I was just... I don't know. Maybe I did something really stupid and it was like just a cloud. There didn't seem to be any clouds. But I don't hold out that I'm just not being really, really dumb, you know, in my observations. That's more likely than anything, right? And you always have to, but that has stayed with me forever because that also was fueled by this desire to be saved by something else.
Yeah.
It was like something else will come and something else, like that's most of the UFO community, honestly. And UFOs are real. I've talked about there's weird things in the sky. But it's attached to like the Pleiadians coming down.
Yeah.
And love and light. And they're going to teach us to live at a better harmonic vibration. It's all just someone else save me besides God. Someone else come save me that won't ask me to stop doing tranny pornography.
Yep.
Please.
Yep.
And that's all it is.
Yeah, it's the same. It's the same cope, man.
It's the same cope. Everything's been the same cope since the golden calf and ball.
Yeah.
It's been the same cope. Like you always wonder, like why they just got out of Egypt with all these miraculous things, and then like they instantly go to worshiping a golden calf. And like, well, the golden calf isn't gonna ask me to do anything.
Right.
That's difficult. Like I can sacrifice my firstborn son to it. That's easy.
And there's orgies and stuff.
And there's orgies. I get the orgies, and all I have to do is kill a baby. And I don't have to worry about my own, and then they'll tell me it's good. And then you're like, well, who could do that? And then you look, it's like, oh, yeah, Planned Parenthood.
Yeah, yeah, right.
Do the same thing. It's the same cope forever.
Yep.
But here, the good news is, God is very familiar with it, and you're not surprising him when you do it.
Mm-hmm.
He's used to it, and he's already forgiven you for it.
Yeah.
You can just, you just have, mainly I think at some point, it becomes not so much guilt as it is shame of being so stupid. Where you're like walking around with a PhD saying, actually, we live in a video game. Which is what people like Neil deGrasse Tyson do.
Yeah.
And then like but rather than like back off of that, it's like a pride thing.
Yep.
You know, the most important thing you can ever do is just admit how stupid you can be.
AKA repent.
Well, yeah, repent, but also just be like, I'm a big dum-dum.
Yeah, yeah.
And like I do stupid stuff. I think everyone should get scammed real hard from some dumb scam at least a couple times.
Truth. Man, talk about
Scammers-
big teaching moments in my life. Getting scammed.
Were you ever scammed?
Many times, yeah.
Yeah. And scammers, that's the purpose, scammers. I think scammers are angels in disguise sometimes.
Yeah.
They're doing the Lord's work.
Those are some meaty red pills full of redness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what it's like. I believe there are angels among us. Then he talks about they come to us like Kenyan Prince emails somewhere up above.
Yeah.
Right? And that's because they're teaching you like, hey, mister, you think you're so smart, you know? And then they take all your money.
Yep.
And then you have to but this people cope so hard about that even. They're like, oh, I'm not dumb.
Right.
That's
yeah, no, the
Just
only way to
admit-
get smart is to admit that you were dumb.
yeah.
Like
And the
that's a
thing is,
key
you'll always
part
be
of the
dumb, but that's just-
process.
Right. So anyway, that was the show. It was on the insanity that you must come to if you don't believe in God. You become not only insane, but you become a genocidal maniac that loves prison rape.
Yep.
And killing half the world to save the penguins that are not in danger.
Yep.
And it makes you a crazy person. Makes you a crazy person, and don't do it.
Don't do it.
It's easier to. Everything's fine. Relax. Did you see that cop in Florida talking about the guys who all the bodies if they were real?
No.
He said they were asking him about the murder rate in his county, which has gone skyrocketing this year. He said he said, I wish everyone would just chill out, have a 7-Up, get a moon pie. Stop murdering people.
Oh, that's that sheriff that's so based down there. What county is that? Polk County, Florida.
I don't know.
Yeah,
But he also,
that guy's great.
There was an earlier clip from him where they asked him why his officers had shot someone 68 times, and his answer was, "Well, they ran out of bullets." He's like this insane Florida man cop.
That guy is like he's the sheriff Florida needs. He really is.
He is. Florida, yeah. It's a problem. Did we have any mailbag? I feel like we did, but I don't remember.
I can't.
If not, we'll just cut it here until of our. Oh wait, one more thing.
Wait, I'm gonna stop the outro again. What's up?
Yeah. What was I gonna say? Oh, we're trying to get 3 people every week to sign up for the St. Nicholas Project on Gum Road. Will it be you? Will you be one of the special 3
It could be you.
that admits that they are dumb and signs up for the scam that is the St. Nicholas Project that gives us $7? It's not really a scam. It's just
It's not. We're very upfront about what you will or won't get.
which is not much.
Yeah.
You're not getting much. This is just a way to support us.
Right.
In the show and get a little something because I feel weird about just a donation Patreon model. So we give you a little bit of extra podcast content. We give you a book that I wrote a long time ago and I don't remember what's in it, and I haven't read it since. And maybe Smokestack gives you some herbal recipes in future.
Maybe.
We'll see.
Maybe. You know,
We'll
this
see. And
this
who
high
knows what else
production
will be there one day.
This high
We
production
don't know.
value doesn't come cheap. I'm just saying.
No, it doesn't. But if you sign up, here's one thing you do get. If you sign up by Christmas, you will get the first 100 episodes on a jump drive sent to the mailing address of your choice.
Yeah, you do have to give us an address though. It's not
Yeah,
automatic.
you do have to give us. I can't just send you a jump drive to the ether.
Yeah.
It has to go somewhere via the mail.
Right.
I wish that I could. I don't know how to do that yet. Maybe one day. But yes, sign up for it. It's good for you. It's good for us. It cures cancer. It protects you from evil spirits and the evil eye. And it makes your grandmother live a little bit longer. You sign up for it. These are all good things. Scientifically validated. Those statements are approved by the FDA.
Mm-hmm. I got a letter
All
from
of it's
Fauci
good.
sitting on my desk right now.
Yeah. It's true. Did build the moon. Ooh, I like this outro.
It's new. I actually lost the old file. So you got a new one.
targets up here? We just had something go right over the top of us that, I hate to say this, looked like a long cylindrical object. It almost looked like a cruise missile type of thing moving really fast that went right over the top of us.